Hello, my name is Tracy Kyo. I'm co-founder of Grow Remote, and I just wanted to let you know what we do, because over the past couple of years, we have evolved what it is that we do. And while we're refreshing the website and all of the communication stuff, etc., I just thought I'd do a quick video to explain it very basically. So Grow Remote, since 2018, has been a volunteer movement that has looked to drive change within Ireland. In 2020, we set up a CLG, a company limited by guarantee. We became a non-profit in Ireland led by John Aboy, who set up Men's Sheds in Ireland, amongst other things. And we're now a team of 9 people. And our aim is to drive systemic change within Ireland. So how is it that we do that? So firstly, we focus in on remote works, that is location agnostic employment. Grow Remote doesn't focus in on gig work or freelance work or stuff that just happens outside of Dublin. Simply because there is a line that in rural Ireland or regional Ireland, you can be self-employed, unemployed or underemployed. And we want to take out that last piece of underemployment. We want access to decent employment for everybody in the country, regardless of where they sit. So to do that, we look at 2 parts, supply and demand. Within supply, we've got 2 categories. First is the 80,000 jobs. So there are 80,000 jobs on the market today. That is, again, decent employment advertised at no location. And that number is growing at a rate of between 5 to 7% monthly. The reason we have a challenge here, well, one reason we have a challenge here is up until last year, neither LinkedIn nor Indeed actually allowed companies to advertise with no location. Even when Grow Remote was hiring our general manager, we had to advertise in cities that we wanted to pull from, as LinkedIn said, as opposed to across the island, which is what we were actually looking to do. So because of the systemic barriers, organizations went to job websites like We Work Remotely, Remote OK, EU Remote Jobs. And so what we then have is jobs that are in one location and people looking over here saying that they can't find them. And then there is no business model to advertise those jobs in local communities. So when GitLab are advertising a marketing manager or a finance role, say, for 50,000, and they don't mind where that job lands, there is no way that they can come into the Burren and Leitrim and Clonakilty and advertise those jobs. So it's up to Grow Remote to do that. 80,000 isn't enough because those jobs are ring fenced into either a tax jurisdiction or a time zone. And although it's growing, if they're available across Europe, the number just isn't significant enough. So we need to increase the supply of remote work. So how do we do that? We do that by transitioning organizations to remote. We manage the transition at 3 levels of an organization. So if you can imagine a big tower, and the top three levels are your senior executives. We go to the CEOs, we go to them with a business case around remote work, right? And we say, listen, will you set the course of the organization towards changing everything to transition over to a remote first culture, meaning that location no longer becomes relevant within the organization. And it needs to be set by the CEO because it's kind of like a digital transformation project. It's quite big. When they commit to it, and we have the CEO of Vodafone, eBay, Liberty Insurance and the ESB, they allocate somebody to us and they meet on a monthly basis to discuss the challenges and opportunities and etc. around managing that transition to remote. Because although companies are coming out remote, this idea of transitioning large enterprises over to remote hasn't been done before. So we need to work together to figure out what the blueprint is. And that alliance work does focus in on large enterprises just because of a return on investment piece for Grow Remote. So if we're working with one organization and we can unlock 8,000 jobs, then that's brilliant. It's a lot more feasible than us trying to work with 100 different SMEs to start off with at least. So then at the second level of the organization, if you can imagine just going down the elevator of that tower into the middle six floors, you have people managers. And if we don't support the people managers to actually implement the change, then we are flogging a dead horse. So Kate Lister, who's one of the best researchers in remote work pre-pandemic, built Global Workplace Analytics, says that people managers are one of the biggest blockers to embedding remote work brilliantly. So we run a free and nationwide training program that goes into the likes of AXA, AIG, Aer Lingus, and that supports people managers. And then we've got one more course for that kind of the next couple of floors, which is Thriving Remotely for all colleagues within the organization to be supported as they work remotely. So that's on the supply side, right? So now all of a sudden what we have is a bunch of jobs that have no location, are available to us all across the country. what do we do with them? So in 2018, we had a conversation with it was an IDA company, but I won't say which one, who were employing remotely across Ireland. And they showed us a map of where they hire, and they hired in Galway and Dublin. So we said to them, why do you hire in Dublin and Galway when you're hiring anywhere? And they said that's just where people are applying from. And so when we were working in the communities in between, we found that these communities and the people within them didn't know that Shopify, Wayfair, Globalization Partners, GitLab Automatic existed. So it was up to us to promote them. So we do a couple of things. We got a jobs board that was built by John Brett, a member of the community, and donated over to the community. We do jobs expos. We go to careers fairs where, again, these 80,000 jobs wouldn't be advertised in a careers fair in Longford, but they will when we're there. And that's why, again, we partner with about 80% of the world's largest remote companies so that we can work with them to support our local communities. Just because jobs are visible doesn't mean they're accessible. I sometimes compare this to kind of gender equality. So it's like saying, oh, the gender problem is solved. Are there a load of leadership positions open? Like, no, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So how do we support people, particularly say in rural and regional Ireland, where they need to transition out of hospitality and retail sectors and seasonal employment into this kind of employment? And so again, we run free training programs that are available free and nationwide and supported with the company. So it's by industry for industry. In the middle of all that is the connection piece. So, and this is how we started off, right? There was no organization who would bring together everything around remote work and just tell us everything. So we became that organization because we're the only nonprofit in this space. So we educate one person in their community and they'll do a bunch of different things. So there are currently essentially two different ways to engage as that connection piece. The first is a local remote work advocate. So we take together all of the stuff around remote work, how it can help communities, how it can help individuals, how it can help all of these different things. And we educate one person, and they might have one conversation in 5 years with somebody. They might never have any conversation. They might set their local community alight with the changes that they're able to implement. But it's a very hands-off approach for us and for them. So it's a self-paced learning course, and they can do as they see fit with the new knowledge that they have. And then we have chapters, and chapters will do one of three things with remote work. They will use remote work to repopulate an area. So that might be, for example, in Longford, where they have housing that's available. So they might use remote work to say, hey, we want to attract people with jobs into our local community and repopulate it. So the likes of Valentia Island would have done that, where they had two families move to the island and keep a school open. And Armagh Island off the coast of Donegal also did that. The second thing that communities might want to do with remote work is get local people employed. So where housing is a big blocker, saying you can't really attract people in, you will have people who are underemployed in the local community. So can we go into them and make them aware of these jobs, give them training and get them employed in these companies? And the third thing that chapters will do is facilitate social connection. And it seems kind of light touch, that last piece, but it isn't. How do we can get people employed, but how do we maintain them? And a bit like we've done with the work with the startup community and other sectors, where we build a thriving ecosystem where all the soft supports are in place. We need a thriving ecosystem that creates a sticky environment for remote work to make sure that it stays here. So that is, I guess, what we do. And so it's some of our work is very long term. So we were speaking to a co-working space a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying he built a co-working space and he was talking to the commuters, and he's like, well, the space is here. But it turns out that these commuters were going to one particular company in Galway, and that company didn't allow for remote work. Not only did they not allow for remote work, but so then they didn't pay co-working stipends. So that co-working manager thought, I'm going to build a co-working space here and it's going to stop the commute. And actually the issue is cultural within the organization. And that's why we do what we do, which is central supports to drive systemic change. So some of it's long-term and some of it is firework activity, big bang stuff. So thank you very much for your time. I just wanted to take some time to explain what it is that Grow Remote does.